Hi, my name is Brooke Daniels, and I'm 34 years old. I built a $22 million business from scratch, without a college degree, without any fancy connections, and without anyone really believing in me. Just an idea, relentless determination, and a whole lot of late nights fueled by passion and grit. It's funny how the same people you sacrifice for, the ones you imagine cheering you on at the finish line, can be the very ones who make you feel like you're never enough. I supported my family financially for years, quietly, consistently. Yet my father still saw me as a failure, called me a lowlife, kicked me out of their lives. I wish I could say that was the worst part, but it wasn't. The worst part was realizing he meant it. Today, as I sit on the back deck of my beach house in Clearwater, Florida, watching the waves roll gently toward the shore, I feel a peace I never thought I'd know. It didn't come easy. It cost me tears, years, and the illusion that I could earn the love I deserved just by succeeding. But it was worth it. Every painful moment, every rejection, every sleepless night, it all brought me here. If you're someone who's ever felt like no matter how much you give, it's never enough, then this story is for you. Because losing my family was what finally set me free. I grew up in a small, conservative town called Maple Ridge, Missouri, a place where tradition runs deep and people believe there's only one path to success: go to school, get good grades, earn a degree, and find a respectable job. My father, Dennis Daniels, was a tax compliance officer for a local corporate firm for over 30 years. He wore his job title like it was a badge of moral superiority, always reminding us that education is the only investment no one can take from you. My mother, Paula, worked as a librarian at the local public school and shared his rigid views on academic achievement. Their expectations were crystal clear. They wanted a daughter who would become a doctor, or maybe a lawyer, someone with a framed diploma on the wall and letters after her name. But even as a child, I could feel myself pulling in a different direction. I didn't want letters after my name. I wanted ideas, action, results. By the time I was 9, I was selling painted seashell magnets to neighbors. By 12, I had the most popular lemonade stand in the neighborhood, not just because it was cute, but because I figured out how to offer mango peach blends and mint cucumber options no one else had. I knew how to spot a need and fill it, even back then. My parents would smile politely and call it cute. But there was always an edge in their tone, a quiet dismissal, like they were waiting for me to grow out of this phase. In high school, while other kids were stressing over college prep, I was designing and selling custom phone cases online. I made enough to buy my own used car at 16, and I was proud of that. But instead of praise, I got lectures. "That's nice, Brooke," my mom would say. "But how's your SAT prep going?" My dad would glance at my laptop and ask, "You still wasting time on that website stuff?" I kept decent grades, not top of the class, but good enough to get accepted into Midwest State University. To keep the peace, I enrolled in the business program. Irony, right? Sitting in classrooms learning how to run a business, while itching to actually build one. To help cover tuition, I got a job at a boutique in town that sold women's shoes and accessories. That's where the spark really lit. I started noticing a pattern in customer complaints. Women hated buying clothes online because what they saw in the photos didn't match what arrived. It didn't fit the way they thought it would. It didn't look like the models. That disconnect, the false promise of online shopping, wasn't just frustrating. It was a problem. One I could solve. That idea consumed me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. A platform where real women, of all body types, could try on clothes virtually, or at least see how those clothes looked on someone with their shape before buying. I sketched ideas between classes. I researched websites and user flows late into the night. My grades started to slide because my energy had shifted from studying theories to building solutions. Halfway through junior year, I knew I couldn't keep pretending. I called my parents to the kitchen table one Sunday evening and told them I was dropping out, that I was going to build the business full-time. The silence was thick and heavy. My dad didn't yell, he didn't have to. He looked at me the way someone might look at a broken watch. "No daughter of mine is going to throw away her education for some internet fantasy," he said calmly, and it was the calmness that cut the deepest. My mom's eyes welled up. "Brooke, please don't ruin your life," she whispered. "You're so close to finishing." But I had already made up my mind. The next morning, I walked into the university office and officially withdrew. I took what little tuition refund I got and used it as the seed money for what would become Styled by You, the fashion tech platform I'd imagined. That was the day everything changed. The fallout was immediate and brutal. My parents didn't speak to me for weeks after I dropped out. When they did, it was usually to express disappointment, not curiosity. They didn't ask what I was building. They didn't want to see my plans or hear about the idea that kept me up at night. All they wanted was for me to go back to school. My dad kept saying, "It's not too late to fix this," as if my decision was a crime I needed to repent for. I moved out of their house and into a tiny studio apartment downtown, if you could even call it that. It was one room with a fold-out futon, a desk, and a hot plate. My workspace was my living space, and every inch had to serve a purpose. I stretched an extension cord across the ceiling, so I could plug in a secondhand lamp above my desk without tripping over it. The paint on the walls peeled in places, and the building's water pressure worked about 60% of the time. But I didn't care. Every morning, I folded up my bed and sat down at my desk to work. I didn't have a team, funding, or a clue how to code, but I had Google and grit. I taught myself how to build a basic prototype website using free tutorials. I visited small clothing shops and convinced boutique owners to let me borrow pieces for photo shoots. I recruited volunteers, friends, acquaintances, strangers I met in line at the coffee shop to model the clothes. Real women, real bodies. No filters, no airbrushing. The agreement was simple. They'd get a free outfit, and I'd get photos for the site. Most nights, I fell asleep at my desk, head resting on open notebooks, my fingers still hovering over the keyboard. I'd wake up a few hours later, stretch, reheat day-old noodles, and start again. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. But it was mine. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was doing exactly what I was meant to do. 3 months in, the website went live. I still remember the sound of the first sale notification, like a chime echoing across my tiny apartment. It came 2 days after launch. A woman in Kansas bought a red wrap dress after watching a clip of someone with her exact measurements, trying it on. Then another order. And another. Within 6 months, we were processing over 50 orders a day. I hired my first part-time employee, Renee, a freelance photographer who had responded to a Craigslist post. She was quirky, smart, and she believed in what I was building. She brought energy to our cramped workspace and new ideas I hadn't considered. We clicked immediately, not just as colleagues, but as co-creators of something bigger than ourselves. At the 1-year mark, I did something bold. I invited my parents to visit the office, a rented space above a pizza place, with peeling linoleum floors and mismatched furniture. I'd cleaned everything the night before, even bought coffee and pastries in case they wanted to stay and talk. When they arrived, my mom walked in cautiously, looking around as if unsure she should even be there. "It's nice," she said politely. "Very creative." My dad stood near the doorway, arms folded. "How much are you actually making after expenses?" he asked. I handed him the binder with our numbers. We were profitable, barely, but profit nonetheless. A rare milestone for a startup less than a year old. He flipped through the pages without expression. "Let's hope it lasts," he muttered. "It's not too late to go back and finish your degree." That night, I sat in the empty office long after Renee had gone home. I looked around at the whiteboards filled with ideas, the racks of clothing we'd photographed that day, the post-it notes with customer feedback taped to the walls. I cried, not because I was sad, but because I was tired of fighting for validation that never came. But by the next morning, I was back at it. If I couldn't get their approval, I would at least prove to myself that I had made the right choice. I didn't know it yet, but that quiet fire inside me would be what carried me through the next phase. A phase filled with growth, rejection, and the kind of self-worth no one can give you and no one can take away. The shift from side hustle to legitimate company happened slowly, so slowly, in fact, that I didn't even realize it at first. One day I was answering customer emails at 2 a.m., packing orders by myself. The next, I was hiring a second employee to manage fulfillment. By the time year 2 rolled around, Styled by You was operating out of a proper office space with 5 full-time staff members and a shared kitchen that smelled constantly of reheated leftovers and overbrewed coffee. The air conditioner barely worked, and the servers hummed louder than any conversation, but none of that mattered. We were building something that mattered. Our users were loyal because we did something no other platform dared to do. We showed clothing on real women. No glossy magazine filters. No professional models. Just regular people. We asked our customers to submit their measurements, and in return, we'd show them how items looked on others with a similar shape and size. We even gave store credit to customers who volunteered to model new arrivals. The response was overwhelming. For the first time, women felt seen, literally. The emails poured in. "I finally feel confident shopping online," one wrote. "I used to cry in dressing rooms. Now I order clothes that actually fit." We were growing fast. But with growth came growing pains. 18 months after our launch, the website started crashing regularly. Our traffic had tripled in less than a year, and our cheap server plan couldn't handle the pressure. Customers were getting frustrated, and I was terrified that we'd lose the trust we'd worked so hard to build. I knew we needed funding to scale, but I also knew that pitching to investors meant walking into rooms full of people who didn't take female founders seriously, especially ones without Ivy League degrees. I was right. I sent 67 pitch emails over 3 months. I presented in front of rooms filled with skeptical men who asked me questions they never would have asked a male founder. "Are you sure you're ready for this kind of responsibility? Shouldn't you bring in a technical co-founder to handle the product side?" Code 4, find a man who understands computers. But I kept going. And then I met Janet Kingman. Janet was a former software executive turned angel investor, known for backing underdog startups with female leadership. She watched my demo quietly, took notes, and asked thoughtful questions. Afterward, she said, "You've built something I wish existed when I was younger. And you did it without burning through millions of dollars. That's rare." A week later, she invested $500,000 in exchange for a 15% stake. The day the funds hit our account, I cried. I celebrated by buying groceries that didn't come in styrofoam cups. For the first time in 2 years, I gave myself a salary, a small one, but enough to stop living on instant noodles and leftover bagels from Renee's breakfast runs. With Janet's guidance, we rebuilt our tech from the ground up. We added the features our users had been begging for: virtual try-on previews, better size comparisons across brands, a community tab where women could swap style tips and reviews. I hired a real tech team, brilliant developers who believed in the mission, and we moved into a new office with actual conference rooms and functioning HVAC. The media started paying attention. At first, it was local business journals, then fashion tech blogs. Then, one day, a feature in Fast Company titled, "The Woman Who's Making Online Fashion Actually Work for Real Bodies." That article changed everything. User sign-ups surged. Orders tripled. Partnerships rolled in. We crossed our first $1 million in revenue during year 3. I bought a small condo. Nothing flashy, just a 2-bedroom walk-up with old hardwood floors and a view of the city skyline that I loved. I sent my parent a check for some roof repairs they'd been putting off. They cashed it. No note. No thanks. Just silence. At family gatherings, my dad still introduced me like this. "This is Brooke, our daughter. She didn't finish college, but runs some kind of internet business." Not our daughter, who employs dozens of people. Not our daughter, who just made Forbes' Young Entrepreneurs list. My mom would change the subject quickly, usually to brag about my cousin Melissa, who had just finished her master's degree in biochemistry. Once, during my grandmother's birthday dinner, an aunt turned to me and said, "I saw your company in a magazine. That's incredible." Before I could reply, my dad cut in. "Yeah, she got lucky. Right place, right time, just like the people who bought Bitcoin early." I stared at my plate, stunned. It wasn't the first time they minimized my accomplishments. But for some reason, that moment stuck with me. Maybe because it was so public. Maybe because I finally realized I would never be enough for them. Not smart enough, not traditional enough, not respectable enough. That night, I added a sticky note to my bathroom mirror. Your worth is not determined by their recognition. It became my mantra, and I needed it more than ever, because I had no idea the role I was about to play in saving the same people who couldn't even say they were proud of me. By the time year 5 rolled around, Styled by You wasn't just a startup. It was a full-blown company with over 100 employees. We'd expanded internationally with separate sites for the UK, Canada, and Australia. Our revenue passed $8 million annually with strong profit margins. I was receiving invitations to speak at conferences, podcasts, and panels. The company won a Web Visionary Award for Best E-commerce Experience, and CNBC included me in a special segment titled Self-Made and Redefining Retail. I emailed the clip to my parents. No reply. Sometimes they would respond with a brief, nice article if I sent them something big. Most of the time, I heard nothing at all. But by now, I had stopped expecting it. At my 10-year high school reunion, I walked into the gymnasium-turned-event hall, not knowing what to expect. I was wearing a simple navy jumpsuit and low heels. Nothing extravagant, but enough to feel confident. People I hadn't spoken to in a decade came up to me, wide-eyed. Brooke Daniels? You started that clothing website, right? You're killing it. Even my old economics teacher, Mr. Hensley, pulled me aside and asked if I'd consider speaking to his students about starting a business. In that moment, I realized something strange. In the eyes of my small hometown, I had made it. They finally saw me. They finally got it. Everyone except my parents. By year 6, Styled by You was valued at $15 million. We moved into a gorgeous office downtown, exposed brick walls, oversized windows, creative lounges, and a kitchen fully stocked with snacks I couldn't have dreamed of affording 5 years earlier. I bought a lakeside house 20 minutes outside of town. It wasn't flashy, no marble fountains or gates, but it was peaceful and beautiful. I landscaped the backyard myself. I imagined hosting family cookouts there, hoping that maybe, just maybe, being physically close to my parents would help soften the emotional distance. It didn't. When my dad visited once, only once, he stood by the picture window and said, "Must be nice to have this kind of place without student loans." He said it like an accusation. The comment stung more than I wanted to admit, but I smiled politely and said nothing. I was used to these quiet jabs. They came packaged in casual tones, dressed like observations, but they always pierced something deep. Still, I hadn't expected what came next. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my assistant, Claire, knocked gently on my office door during a meeting. She mouthed, "It's your mom," and handed me the phone. That alone was strange. Mom never called during work hours. Her voice was tight with nerves. "Your father's been let go. Downsizing," they said. I paused, stunned. Wait, what? His firm was bought out. They're consolidating. After 30 years, they said his position is redundant. I felt a strange twist in my chest, sympathy, concern, and confusion all tangled together. What can I do? There was a pause. A long one. "We'll be fine," she finally said. "I just thought you should know." But they weren't fine. Within 2 months, their savings were nearly gone. My dad, now 59, struggled to find a new job. He was overqualified for entry-level work, too niche for lateral positions. My mom began experiencing migraines that worsened into something more serious. Specialist visits followed. Tests. A diagnosis. The kind of treatment not fully covered by their insurance. I didn't wait for them to ask. I paid off their remaining mortgage, $16,700, freeing up over $1,500 a month in expenses. I covered Mom's medical treatments, got her appointments with specialists. When their 12-year-old sedan finally broke down, I had a new SUV delivered to their driveway. The day I dropped off the keys, Dad stood stiffly on the porch. "We can't accept this," he said. "You can," I told him. "And you will. Consider it payback for raising me." He said nothing, just took the keys. And so began the next chapter. I became the silent financial engine powering their lives. I set up automatic monthly transfers to cover groceries, insurance premiums, utilities. When their kitchen needed renovating, I paid for it. When their roof leaked, I replaced it. When my younger brother Nate got into a private university, I wrote the check for his tuition, room, and board without hesitation. For my sister Kara's wedding, I funded the whole thing. A full ballroom, designer gown, open bar, and a string quartet. The money flowed outward. Always outward. But the recognition? That never came back. Whenever my mom deposited one of my checks, she'd mutter things like, "Business must be doing well," as if the money just appeared magically. My father would bow his head at holiday dinners and say, "God provides," without ever acknowledging who had signed the checks. At a family gathering one spring, I overheard him telling a cousin, "It's just temporary. This help she's giving us. I'll be back on my feet soon." Then he added, "Brooke's little website is doing all right now, but who knows how long it'll last." A $15 million company called a little website. I didn't say a word, just smiled through clenched teeth. That night, my sister Kara noticed the look on my face and reached under the table to squeeze my hand. "They don't get it," she whispered. "But I do. And it's amazing, Brooke." That one moment of understanding meant more than she realized. But inside me, the cracks had already started forming. Because I knew the day would come when those cracks would break wide open. As Styled by You continued to scale, so did my family's quiet dependence on me. My dad eventually found some part-time consulting work, but it paid a fraction of his former salary. My mom's health declined to the point that she could no longer return to work at the library. And I, Brooke, the internet business girl, had become the unofficial family bank. Need a new furnace? Call Brooke. Car payment late? Brooke will take care of it. Medical insurance gap? Just ask Brooke. But despite the constant outflow of support, the way they spoke about my work never changed. To them, my business was still a temporary convenience, a fluke success, not a real career. At Sunday dinners, my father would go on rants about how kids today don't understand the value of education, all while sipping wine I had paid for and eating roast I had funded from a kitchen I had renovated. One evening, after silently enduring yet another lecture about the importance of credentials, I finally spoke up. "Dad," I said calmly, "do you realize that my company now employs over 150 people? That we're projecting $12 million in revenue this year?" He looked up from his plate, half smiling like I'd just told him I was taking up watercolor painting. "That's nice, honey. But these internet companies? They come and go. At least Nate will have his engineering degree to fall back on." I pushed my plate away. 7 years. 7 years of late nights, broken code, payroll stress, missed birthdays, building something from dust, and still, they couldn't see it. Wouldn't see it. "Don't get defensive," my mom chimed in, playing peacemaker as always. "We're just concerned about your future." The irony hit me so hard I nearly laughed out loud. They were concerned about my future, while living on my present. I stayed quiet for the rest of the dinner, letting their words hang in the air. But deep inside, something was beginning to shift, something fundamental. The love and respect I had once so desperately chased from them now felt hollow, artificial. Their approval wasn't fuel anymore. It was a chain. And that chain would finally break on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving had always been a big deal in our family. This year was no different. Turkey, stuffing, wine, extended family. I'd paid for the entire event, including a heritage turkey flown in from Oregon, and the fancy wine my mom liked but never admitted she couldn't afford anymore. I even paid for the dining room remodel they'd just completed, reclaimed wood floors, new light fixture, and the refurbished china cabinet to hold mom's antique glassware. That morning, I arrived early to help. I was arranging dinner rolls into a basket in the kitchen when I heard voices through the heating vent. My father was in the living room speaking to my Uncle Pete. "She's doing fine for now," Dad said casually. "But it's just luck. If the business fails, she's got nothing. No degree. No credentials. Just an internet shop." Uncle Pete said something supportive, something about awards and growth. But Dad brushed it off. "Anyone can win awards. Doesn't mean it's stable. She should have stayed in school." I froze, my hands clenched around the tongs. 1,000 images flashed in my mind. The late nights, the server crashes, The tears, the triumphs, the times I paid their mortgage, paid their hospital bills, paid for their cars, their groceries, their vacations. All of it dismissed as luck. I walked out of the kitchen, my face a mask of calm. Dinner was ready. The table was beautiful. Everyone gathered around. We passed dishes and shared polite conversation, but inside, I was vibrating. Midway through the meal, I put down my fork and spoke. "I have an announcement," I said. The room quieted. "We just won the National Retail Innovation Award," I said. "And we've received an acquisition offer for $22 million. Silence. Then my brother Nate's eyes widened. "Whoa. Are you serious?" I nodded. "I haven't accepted it yet, but yes. That's the offer." The table erupted, cousins, aunts, uncles, cheering, clapping, stunned excitement. Everyone except my parents. My dad kept eating as if I'd said the weather was nice. My mom gave a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. And then Dad looked up. "What would you even do with that kind of money?" I began to answer. Plans for expansion, mentorship programs, investing in women-led tech, but he interrupted. "Anyone can get lucky. What happens when it's gone? You're still uneducated." The room went dead silent. Even the clinking of silverware stopped. "Robert," Aunt Judy said quietly, clearly uncomfortable. But he wasn't finished. "Your cousin Melissa? She built something real. A career in science. That's respectable. What you're doing? It's temporary." I took a breath. Then another. And then, with a strange, almost serene calm, I looked him in the eyes. "Is the mortgage I paid off not real? Are the hospital bills I covered for Mom not real? Is Nate's tuition not real? Kara's wedding? The kitchen we're sitting in?" His face flushed. "How dare you throw that in our faces? We never asked for your handouts." "They weren't handouts," I said. "They were support. From a daughter who loves her family, even when that love is never returned." "We never said you weren't good enough," my mom protested weakly. "You didn't have to," I said. "You show it. Every time you dismiss what I've built. Every time you call it luck. Every time you say it's not real." My dad stood suddenly, his chair scraping loudly. "I won't be spoken to like this in my own home." "The home I paid off," I said, quieter now. He leaned across the table, voice shaking with fury. "Get out. You lowlife. No daughter of mine talks to me that way." Lowlife. The words echoed in my chest. My mother gasped but said nothing. My siblings stared, stunned. I stood slowly, placed my napkin on the table, looked around the room at a family that had never truly seen me. "I'm not being kicked out because I was disrespectful," I said. "I'm being kicked out because I finally stopped accepting your disrespect." And I walked out of the house, out of the role of the silent supporter, out of the fantasy that one day they would finally say, "We're proud of you." I drove away from that house in silence. The same street I used to ride my bike on as a kid blurred past the windows as tears slid down my cheeks. I didn't even turn on the radio. I just needed to feel it, all of it. The pain, the betrayal, the brutal confirmation of what I'd always feared but never wanted to accept, that nothing I did, no matter how extraordinary, would ever be enough for them. That night, I checked into a hotel. I ordered a sandwich I didn't eat, stared out the window at the dark sky, and cried until my eyes were swollen. I wasn't crying because they kicked me out. I was crying because I'd finally stopped pretending it could be fixed. The next morning, I made myself coffee, pulled a hoodie over my puffy face, and stared at my phone. Over a dozen missed calls and texts blinked on the screen. From Kara. "I can't believe that happened. I'm so sorry, Brooke." From Nate. "Dad went way too far. Call me." From Aunt Judy. "He shouldn't have spoken to you like that. You didn't deserve that." From my parents? Nothing. Later that day, I called my best friend Rachel, who'd moved to Seattle years ago but remained my go-to for every emotional breakdown. "He called you a lowlife," she repeated, stunned. "Yeah," I whispered. She went quiet for a moment, then said firmly, "Brooke, that's not just mean. That's emotional abuse. I shouldn't have brought up the money. I said, still trying to justify it. I just... Stop, Rachel interrupted. You told the truth. And he couldn't handle it. He's been taking your money and calling you a disappointment for years. That's not love. That's control. Her words hit me in the chest like a wave, not because I didn't know it, but because hearing it out loud made it real. Over the next week, I tried, maybe foolishly, to reconcile. I called, left voicemails, sent emails, even drove past the house once, hands shaking on the steering wheel, but I couldn't bring myself to knock. Nothing. No response. Just silence. Meanwhile, the $22 million acquisition offer loomed. The buyers, a major retail tech platform based out of Miami, were eager to move forward. The deal was structured as an upfront payout, with an additional earnout over 3 years if we hit growth targets. $22 million. It was more money than I ever thought possible, especially for someone who started out with nothing but a rented room and a dream. But I hesitated. Not because of the money. Not because of the deal. But because a small part of me, despite everything, still wanted to prove myself to my parents. Still hoped that this would finally be the moment they saw me. I brought it up in therapy. My therapist, Dr. Cassandra Wright, had been working with me for a few months now. She listened quietly as I poured out everything about Thanksgiving, the words, the looks, the emptiness afterward. She said gently, "Your parents have shown you, over and over, who they are, what they value. The question is, can you accept the reality of who they are instead of clinging to who you wish they were?" I was quiet. What if accepting this offer feels like giving up on ever proving myself to them? I asked. Dr. Wright leaned forward. "Brooke, you've spent 7 years proving yourself. At what point is it enough? When they're finally proud? Or when you finally believe you don't need them to be?" That night, I made my decision. I called Janet Kingman, my investor, and now board member. "I'm accepting the offer," I told her. "But I want one condition. Which is, I want to relocate the headquarters to Florida." There was a pause. "That's the big change from Missouri." "I need a fresh start," I said. She understood immediately. "This is about your family, isn't it?" "Yes," I admitted. "I can't keep trying to earn what they'll never give. It's bleeding into how I lead, how I live." "You don't need my blessing," Janet said, "but for what it's worth, I think this is the right move for the business and for you." And just like that, the wheels were in motion. The acquisition closed 2 weeks later. The first installment, $11.2 million after taxes, was wired into my account on a Thursday morning while I sat alone in my office, sipping lukewarm coffee and staring at the sunrise. It didn't feel real. No fireworks. No applause. Just a quiet, funds received notification from my bank. The second half of the payment would come over 3 years if Style by You hit the growth targets outlined in the agreement, targets I was confident we'd surpass. And just like that, I became a multimillionaire. But instead of popping champagne, I sat in silence, staring out the window as a strange mix of grief and freedom washed over me. I wasn't celebrating. I was mourning the version of me who had spent so many years trying to earn love that was never coming. That weekend, I flew to Clearwater, Florida to start house hunting. I didn't want the biggest or the most luxurious property. I wanted a home, somewhere peaceful, bright, and nothing like the life I was leaving behind. I toured a few places, but one instantly pulled me in. It was a modern beach house with 3 bedrooms, a wraparound deck, and floor-to-ceiling windows facing the Gulf of Mexico. It felt like a sanctuary. "I'll take it," I told the realtor before she even finished the tour. The speed of the decision surprised even me. But after years of hesitating, explaining, and second-guessing, it felt powerful to choose something without asking anyone's permission. The house closed in January, and I immediately hired an interior designer named Lucia. I told her, "No more beige walls. I want bold colors, warm wood, and spaces that feel like sunlight." She nodded. "Starting fresh completely?" "Exactly." While the house was being furnished, I shifted focus to the company transition. Fortunately, the acquiring company stayed true to their word. They didn't gut our culture or leadership. I remained at the helm for the earnout phase, and two-thirds of my team relocated with me to Florida. I offered generous moving stipends, set up temporary housing, and ensured that every employee had what they needed. Our new Tampa office had glass walls, ocean views, and an energy that matched the next chapter of our brand. The leadership team clicked into rhythm quickly. The business continued growing. But more importantly, I started growing again. I created boundaries. Real ones. I stopped answering calls from my parents. I paused all financial support. I didn't send angry messages or cut them off with drama. I simply stopped. I chose myself. My siblings, meanwhile, reached out separately. Kara came to visit the Tampa office one afternoon, eyes puffy from crying. I should have spoken up, she said quietly. Back at Thanksgiving. All the other times, too. I'm sorry. I hugged her. You don't have to apologize for them. I'm not, she replied. I'm apologizing for me. I let them minimize you, and I took your help without defending you. Her words meant more than I could say. It wasn't about sides. It was about being seen. Nate reached out a few days later with a different tone. He called me on a Tuesday evening. Dad asked me if I could help out with property taxes. I hesitated. What did you say? I told him to ask you. He said he'd rather not. I exhaled. I haven't decided yet. Are you cutting them off? The question made me pause. I hadn't thought of it as cutting them off. I'd simply stopped enabling them. I'm taking a step back, I said carefully. I can't keep being their safety net while they treat me like a disappointment. That's fair, Nate said. But they really do need help. Of course they did. They always did. But Dr. Wright's voice echoed in my mind. Support without respect isn't love. It's exploitation. That night, I sat on my new deck, the ocean breeze cool against my skin, and made a decision that terrified me and liberated me at the same time. I wrote an email to my parents. Dear Mom and Dad, I want you to know that I love you, but I need to establish healthy boundaries. I can't continue providing financial support in a relationship where my efforts and achievements are dismissed. If and when you're ready for a relationship based on mutual respect, I'll be here. But until then, I need space for my well-being and for my future. I hit send, then turned off my phone, and sat there, eyes closed, as the waves whispered the kind of peace I'd been chasing my whole life. 2 days after I sent the email, the acquisition paperwork was officially finalized. The ink dried, the lawyers signed off, and Styled by You entered a new era under the parent company's umbrella. That same day, the second installment of my payment plan was set in motion. Milestone bonuses, growth incentives, options for expansion into Europe and Asia. But even with millions in the bank, what struck me most was not the wealth. It was the stillness. For the first time in over a decade, I wasn't scrambling. I wasn't trying to prove myself. I wasn't carrying anyone on my back who refused to walk beside me. I was free. In the months that followed, I embraced the life I had long postponed. I joined a yoga class that met on the beach at sunrise. I met new friends, artists, writers, startup founders, people who knew me as Brooke, not the girl who dropped out, or the one with that internet thing. I learned how to paddleboard, badly, tried surfing, worse, and fell in love with early mornings and quiet nights. And then, on a bright Sunday in July, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find my mother standing on the porch, alone. Hi, she said awkwardly. Your assistant gave me the address. My stomach twisted. What are you doing here? She looked down, then back up. Can I come in? I stepped aside. She looked around the living room. Bright turquoise pillows, sunlight pouring in through the windows, local art on the walls. It's very bright, she said. That was her version of a compliment. We sat on the back deck, coffee in hand, silence stretching between us. Finally, she said it. Your father doesn't know I'm here. I nodded. Of course he didn't. We're struggling, Brooke. The property taxes doubled this year. My treatment plan changed again. The insurance won't cover all of it. So this wasn't a visit for closure, or reconciliation, or even an apology. It was about money. Again. I see, I said quietly. We're not asking for much, she added. Just what you used to send before Thanksgiving. I looked out at the water. It sparkled in the afternoon sun, calm and endless. I had worked my entire life for this calm, for the power to choose. I can't go back to how things were, I said firmly. Dad called me a lowlife, in front of the entire family, and neither of you has ever acknowledged how hurtful that was. He was upset, she replied. You know how he gets. That's not an excuse, I said. It was emotional abuse. Would you let a friend stay in a relationship like that? She flinched. It's different. He's your father. Exactly. It should be different. It should be better. She sat stiffly, twisting the ring on her finger. We're your parents, Brooke. We need your help. And there it was, the line that had always worked before. I paused, thinking about the version of me who would have broken at that sentence. The Brooke who would have opened her wallet and her wounds again and again, hoping that maybe this time it would be enough to buy their love. But that Brooke was gone. I'm happy to help you find a financial planner, I said. Or help Dad get connected with job leads through my network. But I can't send money into a relationship where there's no respect. I just can't. Her face hardened. So, we have to pretend we approve of your life, or we get nothing. That's your deal? No, I said softly. I'm not asking for approval. I'm asking for basic respect. There's a difference. She stood abruptly. Your father was right, she said coldly. Success has changed you. I stood too. Calm. Rooted. No, Mom. What's changed is that I finally recognize my own worth, with or without your validation. She walked to the door without another word. I watched her go, and when the door closed behind her, I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I sat back down, took a sip of coffee, and exhaled. Later that evening, I walked the shoreline as the sun dipped into the Gulf. The colors, coral, amber, violet, bled into each other like brushstrokes on a canvas. And with every step, I felt lighter, more whole. I no longer ached for what I never had. Instead, I made space for what I could build. I launched a new venture, a platform that connected self-taught professionals with companies willing to hire based on skill, not credentials. I called it PathMade. It grew from the same belief that built Style by You, that value isn't defined by diplomas or approval but by ability, courage, and the willingness to create something out of nothing. I also launched a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs without degrees. I spoke at conferences, gave a TED Talk. It went viral. Messages poured in. You made me believe I don't have to wait for permission. I dropped out 2 years ago. My parents still think I'm lazy. Your story gave me the strength to keep going. And I realized something extraordinary. The pain I endured had become someone else's permission to rise. One day in April, Nate messaged me. Dad had a minor heart attack. He's okay, but it was a scare. I read the text, sat with it, waited for the guilt to arrive. It didn't. I sent flowers to the hospital with a note. Wishing you a full and speedy recovery. Brooke. No check. No visit. Just quiet compassion without obligation. A year after I left Missouri, I hosted a housewarming party. Friends, colleagues, ments, and neighbors filled my deck, laughing over sunset drinks. Cara flew in for the weekend. At dessert, she stood and raised her glass. To my sister, Brooke. A year ago, she made the hardest choice a person can make, to walk away from a family that wouldn't accept her in order to build a life that would. To courage, to boundaries, to building peace from pain. To Brooke. Glasses clinked. Tears welled in my eyes. Later, alone by the waves, I whispered a thank you to the version of me who dared to leave. Because sometimes the hardest choices lead to the greatest freedom. And sometimes the family we build honors us more than the one we were born into. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful, real-life stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us keep bringing you content that truly matters. Thanks for watching.